Welcome to the Happy Soul Podcast. My name is Melissa, and this is Sammy. We are diving deep into conversations that connect and inspire. Stories of resilience, triumph, and transformation. Stories that take us to the heart of human connection. Please note that opinions of our guests do not necessarily reflect those of this podcast. Please listen with your kindness and an open mind. Each story shared is authentic and vulnerable. Let's embrace our differences with empathy, knowing every voice enriches us. Together, let's cultivate a community of respect and curiosity. Thank you for listening. Now sit back, relax, and prepare to be inspired. Welcome to the Happy Soul Podcast, everybody. Holy, y'all, do you know when you read a book and you're so excited about it and you're soaking it all in and you get to the end and you just want to hear more for the author? Buckle up, because today is that day for us. We are so excited today to welcome Andrea Merkl to the podcast. Andrea is the author of a book called The Gift of Infidelity. She is an expert on personal growth, transformation. She has deep dove into neuroscience and healing, and she is a mother. And we met her at the Jessica Jansen event, actually, and passed each other. And it was this very cool kind of serendipitous meeting where we both kind of saw each other. We wanted to chat more. It was it pouring rain at the time?
No, it wasn't raining on her.
That was going into it, that it was pouring rain. Anyway, so we just passed each other and then since have connected. We're so excited to have you here today, Andrea. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you both. I'm so excited to be here. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. I remember because you had nice earrings on. I don't remember what they looked like, but I remember being like, I really like your earrings. And you said,
we chatted on the corner. It was dark. It wasn't raining still, but we were both leaving the event at the same time and crossing the street. So yeah, we were both chatting about our outfits to each other.
Oh my gosh. So funny.
Very fun.
Actually, that's what I remember about our conversation. Is I remember liking your earrings, and I can't remember what they look like now. But the way that you said thanks, they have this meaning behind something. I can't remember what it was, and I was like, oh, I'd like to hear more about that. But we parted ways almost immediately afterwards.
I have to go back to a photo to check. I remember the outfit, but I don't remember the earrings.
Anyways, yes, cool. So excited to have you here, Andrea. I want to jump right in with this question from a quote from your book. As I was reading your book, I was taking pictures of pieces that I was like, I want to talk to her about this. I want to talk to her about this. And I feel like this one kind of encapsulates everything to do with relationships that we can go further down the road of. But you wrote this quote, and I'm going to read it almost verbatim from the book. It says, "What if the greatest love stories you will ever have is how you let go of someone you love? What if we believe that love never dies and is only transformed? That we can still love someone after a relationship ends, and that there is another way?" And I loved that part because I feel like it's something that's very forgotten. We almost assume that when a relationship ends, no matter whether it's a romantic relationship, a parent relationship, a friendship, it doesn't matter. We assume that when it ends, there has to be a dislike towards that person, whether you're going to go all the way to hate or not. We don't believe that there can still be love behind it. And I 100% agree with you. There can always still be love behind that relationship. But I'd love to hear more about what caused you to write that.
I know I definitely didn't always start off thinking that, and with that quote, it's so true when we're young and we start having relationships. It's almost like a self-protection mechanism to move towards dislike or hate or anger when a relationship ends, because you feel hurt inside. So you are trying to protect yourself, and you don't have these other tools of self-soothing behaviors that we've learned maybe as an adult now, or other ways to feel and move through emotion. So it was just really interesting to me because this was probably the first time in a relationship breakdown with a partner, which was my husband at the time, where I started to experience that, feeling those negative emotions of hate and anger and rage and dislike towards a person. It wasn't benefiting me in any way. And with the help of my therapists and other practitioners who helped me along the way, I started to actually pray this prayer. In the book, I talk about the prayer of St. Francis. And it literally was just like an internal transformation of well, I can offer someone love that isn't offering me love back right now. And in me doing that, I actually experience love. It's a new way of thinking and being in relationships that, and I really do believe this now, that love can never be destroyed. It's only transformed. So we always think that, romantic love is the highest maybe form of love, or you might think that the love for your child is the highest form of love. But again, going through this experience, it really showed me that there's only one like broad umbrella of love, and all these types that you think are siloed into separate feelings of love are actually just one type of love. And that, energy is kind of what exists in the world. We're all made out of energy, and that energy can never be created or destroyed. And I know how it transformed my heart and my mind and how I was feeling, and that I, even though it could be hard, I always want to move forward that way, with others. And like I said, it's not an easy thing, and it's something that perhaps when you just start to have awareness of, you can, start practicing a prayer like the prayer of St. Francis, or doing forgiveness practices towards someone, or in a meditation or on your own. But I can definitely see now how, that is so much more beneficial than moving towards a negative, emotion like hate or dislike, to move on from a relationship.
So
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I love that so much. Can you describe to us, like, that sounds like it's not just a light switch that goes on and off. Like, it's something that is a constant moving, constant growing thing. Like, once you've figured that out, it's probably still something that is ever growing. And do you
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yes,
And
definitely.
so how do you take that with you in a moment where maybe you're faced with somebody doing something where you feel like you have to stand up for yourself, but you still want to act in love and forgiveness, but somebody is maybe actively doing something that makes you feel like you have to, I guess, I don't know how else to say,
Right.
stand up for yourself. You need to stand up for yourself. You need to speak up and
Yes.
advocate for yourself, but you want to do that from the place of love, not going into hate. How do you find
Yeah.
that balance?
So I think about it as calm courage. So it's like you can be in a sense of power and empowerment in a heart-centered way. And so you can have a sense of like power or control, or um like having a boundary, or protecting yourself, and speaking up in a way that's still grounded in like what I call calm courage. Because it's not that you're not feeling upset or afraid or irritated or frustrated by something, but you can connect into your heart to say, I want in this moment, or I choose in this moment to act in a heart-centered way. So you can be firm, you can be um really clear on your words. You can have like a tone of voice that's, still really determined. But I think it's, you will speak words that don't bring more hurt into a scenario. I think that's what's the main thing about, living or speaking and acting in a heart-centered way and through calm courage, is that you're not contributing to more damage. You're not um contributing in a way that is hurtful, but it could still be firm. And I think that's probably the way that I think about it, and have to remind myself all the time as well. It's not something that I easily can do all the time as well. So
Oh, that's so great.
So,
Thank you. Oh my
yeah,
gosh, I
thank
love
you.
that
I want to
answer.
ask a really direct question. So,
sure.
just when you're talking about your growth in learning this through your therapist and all of the healing that you've done,
Yeah.
is your natural state to respond in more of an anger, like inflict the pain back to someone kind of way, and you've grown to shift? Or did you respond that way sometimes, but it wasn't always like what you're doing now is more natural to you? Does that make
No, my
question?
natural way from childhood was very quick to anger. I was like a very angry child, teenager, very quick to lash out. And I mean, I think that's not our innate state of being coming into earth as a soul and a little child. Like, I think our innate way is to be open and loving. And then there's program and conditioning and things that happen. And in my case, having a childhood trauma of sexual abuse at a very young age very much shifted my brain and my nervous system and my way of being in the world. But you can experience distress in your mother's womb, and that's even they have research on how that's passed down genetically, like how different disorder and mental illness is passed down through genes, and you are experiencing that even as a baby that's not born yet. So, yeah, I think our innate sense of being is to be open and loving and to have calm courage and be heart centered. But as we start to grow up and are parented and go to school and have friends and relationships, that stuff all starts to impact and chips away at that heart centered being. And it kind of ties back to our first topic on we want to be, I think our innate instinct is we want to be loving and not leave a relationship with hate, but that is just something that we've developed. So yeah, for me it was something I really had to work on, and the more that I could release those emotions from my body, the anger and the rage and terror and frustration, and learn how to feel and process and release that, and to do somatic work where it can be released from my body, then I was able to try to cultivate this um, loving way of reacting instead of coming at it from like an angry, hurtful way.
Yeah. No, that makes absolute sense. And the reason I wanted to ask that wasn't to like isolate you, but it was for people out there. I think there's people out there who do react in anger and quick anger, quick frustration, quick to call names, quick to whatever. And they can say that's just the way I function. And obviously you have to have a desire to grow and change in order to make it happen. You don't just do it because someone said you could. But I think that hearing that that's not your natural state, that you had to grow through that, can be really helpful for people who maybe do function that way and want to grow and respond more in love.
For sure. That makes so much sense. I think that a lot of us feel that way, and it's something that's like a learned behavior that we can choose to do. Yeah.
It's almost like society tells us that we have to have that in order to move on from anything.
I know.
Like, you have to go into that state in order to move on from anything. You can't move on unless you have that. And that's, I think, such a fallacy. Is that the right word?
Yeah,
Fallacy.
I think we see it in like movies and shows. I think also, I don't know if we ever were taught another way. Like, have we ever seen a show or a movie where, the outcome has someone acting in such a loving way towards someone else when they say like get divorced or go through a trauma? It's very interesting. Yeah, I think nowadays more and more we will see more of it. People are writing about it. People are being more interested. So hopefully that can shift, and society. I talk about in my book too about the victim perpetrator complex and how people want someone to blame. And I think again, it's to make them feel better, and it's an easier way to feel better inside if I can blame someone else for how I feel and for a problem, or for, say, them doing something towards me.
Yeah.
But actually, you can feel better without any of that.
Yeah. I remember having that conversation with someone years ago. I said, like, you have to walk into a conversation after a conflict assuming nobody's at fault. Nobody's at fault. There's just a conversation. And the response was, look, I know you can't tell someone that they're at fault. I said, no. There is no fault. And they were like, no, I know you can't tell someone they're at fault. And I said, no. Different conversations we're having here. You're saying you think someone's at fault and you're not going to tell them. I'm saying neither of you are at fault, and you need to come and have a conversation to grow and be better in the future. And this person was like, just like could not comprehend that somebody wasn't at fault. And I was like, okay, we'll just move forward in this conversation.
It's a hard concept sometimes. And I think too, because everyone's having their own personal reality here, being in like the world, and there can be multiple truths at one time, and that might be just their truth for them and how they are seeing it. And it's kind of this like their state of consciousness and our own state of consciousness. And how they're interacting, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
It
It's
is
very interesting. Oh my gosh. Can you, because I started reading your book the minute you started talking about self-betrayal. I was like, and I remember I messaged you right away because I was like,
Yes.
wait, I have never related to anything more in my life. Like, I also was a cradle Catholic and all of the things that come along with that, and finding the balance between, growing up within that church and then finding my own belief system and all of that stuff, which was something else we could dive into at another time. But I read the stuff about self-betrayal and I was like mind boggled. Like,
Yeah.
I was like audible. Like, I'm reading the book and I was like, yes, oh my gosh, absolutely. Can you define what self-betrayal means to you?
Sure. Oh, I love that that was your reaction, and I'm so glad you messaged me. I felt that way too. Initially, I just need to say this quick and then I'll define self-betrayal. I was in my therapy session early on after the reveal of the infidelity. It was our couples therapist. I had an individual therapist too. Our couples therapist said to me, Andrea, no one can ever betray you. You can only betray yourself. And I was like, what the F? Like I was swearing and I was like, are you serious? Like, are you seeing what's going on? Like, are you not witnessing this? So I couldn't grasp the concept at the time. And then I sat with it and continued this work. And that's how I came to the discovery of what actually is self-betrayal. And so how I define it is self-betrayal is a disconnection to self. And that self is like your highest self. And when I dug even deeper, it would be to say what I consider to be God or infinite intelligence, source, like what created you and in this world. But it's a disconnection to self. It's living out of alignment with who you truly are. And at its worst, it's self-hatred. So for me, it really showed up as self-hatred growing up. And again, it's probably stemming from the root trauma from childhood. Um, but yeah, it essentially is not living in alignment with who you truly are. So you say yes to something when you want to say no. You don't speak your truth in fear of creating conflict. You don't want to voice an opinion. You would maybe people please. You're codependent, so other people's feelings are an experience is more valid than your own. Again, it's a lot of placing your worth outside of you, and a lot of it. Well, I think it all comes from attachment theory from when you're young, and you're trying to heal that primary caregiver wound with it's either your mother or your father or whoever was the primary caregiver. And so it's a lot of it is based on attachment. And if you can't feel connected to who you truly are, you feel misplaced. Like you don't feel like you belong. You don't feel confident. You probably don't have high self-worth. And you are looking for something external to validate you instead of having that internal source and connection and validation.
Oh my gosh, so good.
Yeah.
That's so crazy. Like, again, it's just so wild to think. It goes to what we were talking about right at the start. Like, wait, somebody's doing something to me. I should be lashing out at them. But then what's going on in here? What's going on? And for me, it hits in like a cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Right? Like same thing, right? That believing two things at the same time and how you pull yourself out of that. I mean, it's good. It's
Yeah.
good.
It's wild. But it once you have awareness around it, it is more empowering than living in like a victim consciousness type of way because you can see, oh, how have I been betraying myself my whole life? Like for me and choosing a partner and how it just the whole thing was connected for me and interconnected where choosing a partner that innately like, and unconsciously would betray me because I was trying to heal this childhood wound of this not being enough, fear of being abandoned, and unlovable. So, of course, I chose someone unconsciously that would bring up all those wounds for me so that they can be healed. Because I think we're here to heal those deep soul connections, and that's the purpose of our soul's growth.
I have goosebumps.
It's hard though. I mean, it's not an easy
100%.
thing.
No.
Again, it wasn't an easy experience. And I talk about this, how I feel very grateful and wouldn't change what I went through. But it also really transformed me into a person who I think is more of my true nature, my true self, and this like childlike self without programming, conditioning, and trauma. Going through that and learning and growing to have this like larger transformation and purpose in life. But that kind of transformation isn't easy.
Absolutely.
It's funny that that's what you brought up, Melissa, because my next thing was her quote from the book. We most commonly betray ourselves in relationships that we out of what we think is love, trying to give the other person what they want when it's not in alignment with our desires, which is obviously paraphrasing what you wrote in the book there, but that's what was. We did not compare notes before this conversation.
Oh wow.
That's hilarious. I want to ask you though, with that, Andrea, how has the growth that you've gone through with learning self-betrayal and how to be more in line with yourself and your desires and not betraying yourself, how has that shifted how you are in relationships, not romantic ones, but friendships, family, kids, like with your motherhood journey and everything like that? How has that shifted how you, I guess, behave, for lack of a better term, in those relationships? Or has it?
Yeah, it definitely has. It's still an evolving journey, and I'm still learning as I go, and not perfect in any way. I think that one of the things is I don't care about other people's opinions very much at all anymore, and that's letting go of that external validation, behavior. That would be the number one thing. I am very more decisive, where I used to be very indecisive. I couldn't make decisions well. I would usually just say, whatever you want to do, like whatever you want to do, like where do you want to go for lunch? Well, whatever you want to go. Where now I can make a decision like quite quickly and feel confident about it. I never really had like a true sense of self. So I think that's what's aligned more inside of me, and that's showing up in this new way where there's more boundaries. I I feel authentic in the way of being now, and it doesn't bother me that it doesn't fit into someone's view or relationship. And I can literally like feel it in my body, because I think I've done so much somatic work that if it feels off, like I just won't continue that relationship, whether it be like a friendship or like say I go on a date with someone. And then I can tell like really fast, where before I would want this longing to be connected, longing to be in a relationship again. So I would betray what my own desires or alignment are just to be in a relationship with someone. And that was an awareness that developed, and it came from feeling in what feels true in my body and like safe, and then what feels like maybe more like a threat or a red flag or just not aligned. So it's really interesting. It's more, I can feel more connected to my intuition would be the second biggest thing. And I think that's that feeling it in your body, and then knowing to move forward in a relationship or continue like a friendship or even a work contract. I found it helped in work as well. In motherhood and in my family, like my internal like mother and father and sister's family, it's still being kind of like worked out. And especially with parenting, I find, because I'm learning these tools as I'm raising kids and they're still quite young, I still am a more of like a repair parent, because I still can, my window of tolerance has grown, but I still can reach a limit and then just lose it. And so I quickly can then apologize, can calm down, get into a regulated state, and then connect and say, this is about what's going on inside of me and it has nothing to do with you. And this isn't your fault. And I think that's one of the biggest things with parenting, what changed for me. But again, I'm still learning these tools and cultivating them more and more. But I would say, yeah, those are probably my top things.
Oh my gosh.
That makes sense.
Can you describe, just like because listen, anybody reading, please go and get this book and read it. We want you to read the book. We don't want you to listen to the podcast and not read the book. Read the book and then come back and listen to the podcast. Can you describe the things that you described, somatic workouts, therapy, the work that you did, just kind of in, I guess, short form, because I don't want to give away the book, but in short form, the work that you did to get to that place?
So first off, there was a lot of EFT, which is like the tapping. So this is when to help like quickly regulate when I was feeling distressed, like while the affair was going on and we were living together and I had just given birth. So that was a quick tool which would relieve like a heightened state, like anxiety, stress, worry, fear in like 2 minutes. So I was taught to do that. And it basically is that even though I feel this feeling towards someone, I feel total love and acceptance within myself. So bringing in that internal calm piece. And then the second thing would be EMDR. And we would do EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So you're bouncing back from one side of the brain to the other. And usually we do it with headphones and the music is kind of like bilateral. So one ear then the other. Or you can do like an eye movement. Some therapists do that, or like tapping on a shoulder or your knee like this. But you basically talk with your therapist, practitioner on a distressing issue. And then I was doing somatic work. So she would ask me where it's feeling in my body, like tightness in the chest, like knots in your stomach, and have your body feel the emotion connected to that experience. And then your body is then feels safe to release that. And you can have a memory that is not connected to those stronger emotions. So for example, childhood sexual abuse for me, I could go through in that experience and release those strong feelings of fear and terror and almost visualize and see that as an outsider as well. And so I wasn't then connecting that event with those feelings anymore. It was like neutral. Amazing. So somatic work is called somatic experiencing. And a lot of therapists do this in tandem with EMDR or even in talk therapy. But somatic experiencing is essentially getting in touch with the feeling that you're having from an issue or something that's distressing or triggering you. And you recognize where you feel it in your body. And you tell your body basically it's safe to release this. And so because emotions are just energy, and energy is all stored in your body. And if you don't move through a cycle, say, of fight and flight or freeze, so if you're essentially like an animal, and research shows animals, if they're being attacked and then they survive, they shake a lot after because they have to release all these hormones like adrenaline and everything that their body produced to activate them to fight. To survive. So if you can't fight or flee, you freeze, and those energy and emotions get trapped in your body. So it can be like, for me in the book, I talk about it showed up like pain in my gallbladder liver area. And that was kind of like shock trapped in there. So that was really good to experience the somatic work because I hadn't known how to recognize those feelings, especially those really hard feelings for me, like fear and shame and anxiety and terror, and where it was showing up for me, sadness, and then really feel that to then release it so it cannot be stored anymore. What else do I talk about in the book as one of the tools? I share a couple meditations that really worked, but I think that's about it. Those are the top three: the EFT, EMDR, and somatic experiencing. Yeah.
Think about that with kids. Like what I was thinking is you were saying like animals shake. Number one, I was thinking, I wonder if that's why dogs shake when they get out of the water. Yes. Like they were saving their life and then they shake.
My acupuncturist, Chinese medicine practitioner, he says, he's writing this book right now, and it's a lot of like the behaviors of dogs, and how he's like, you need to almost like share a lot of these behaviors when you feel like a threat, because there's always threats happening, but animals are just instinctively know how to release the threat, where
Yeah.
we don't.
Yeah. And then think about kids. Think about when your kid is having a tantrum or hitting things. And obviously, we have to make them not hit people.
Right.
But if we consistently condemn them for hitting in general, instead of giving them a safe place to hit, just like you're saying, they're keeping that energy in. They're not physically letting it out. And that's how a kid physically lets it out. So it's just like what a lot of these recent parenting things talk about is it's don't tell them not to hit. It's give them a safe place to hit because they're releasing those emotions. And it's like, I had put together the like, let it out somewhere, but it hadn't kind of hit with the like, that's their body releasing that moment kind of thing. Like you were saying, the fight, flight, or freeze, which is like, whoa. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
Good. So good. They say
No.
tapping is really good for kids too. Like they're starting to teach tapping in some schools. And my therapist actually told me to, I have one little guy who's very, very active and has a hard time kind of like, if we're trying to have a conversation that's really important, he's like all over. And she taught me to do EMDR with him just by holding his hands and squeezing left hand, left hand, right, or his shoulders if I need to get his attention for something. Instead of being like, come in, talk to me, I just go and gently squeeze his shoulders. And it is incredible, the difference.
Really? Oh my gosh.
It's incredible.
Wow.
It
I'm
has.
gonna try that with my daughter tonight, the hands thing, because my younger
It's
one,
amazing.
she has a hard time getting back to homeostasis and like gets dysregulated quickly. And I've gave her like the safe space with like, you can go in your room and like thrash around, like hit the pillow, scream into a pillow, like get the energy out. You can't hurt anybody. But I really like the idea of trying the EMDR and while talking to her to help her come into the space of like connection with me. Okay.
It's really incredible. Sometimes I'll just go and silently walk behind him and grab his shoulders and just put pressure one the other until he's like, Mom, what? I'm like, now we're going to talk.
Oh, amazing.
Like now we're going to, because he's not ready yet until I'm like, till his attention is on the right, left. He's not ready yet.
That's
And
so
then
cool.
once I have his attention, then we can start talking, and it's been a game changer for us over here for sure. Anyway, sorry, I kind of took us down a little bit.
No.
That's amazing.
That's really
Loop-de-loop.
awesome. That's really
It's
awesome.
cool.
I have a total curiosity question for you, and you can veto this if you want to. But I know, like in your book, and like you just mentioned, that you realized that there was some sexual abuse as a child after going through the EMDR. After learning about it, do you remember it? Or is it still just like a physical memory and not a mental memory?
I did have visual memory in the EMDR sessions of it. Yeah. So initially I had no memory of it until I was 36 years old at the time. And so I didn't have a memory. It's called dissociation. And that's very common with people who go through abuse, and especially children when your brain's not developed that much. It's your body, nervous system, brain's way of protecting itself when in a threat situation. And you kind of, it's just like a fragmentation and in memory. And I was learning how memory is stored, and it's not all stored in the same spot. So it's very interesting how you can have pieces of memory but a lot of books like The Body Keeps the Score and reading on like how trauma is stored in your body. It's more often, like you said, Tammy, like it's you feel something's wrong in your body before you have a visual image of it.
Yeah.
It really made a lot of sense after I processed that, and then how I had developed this self-hatred, anxiety throughout my whole life, like this strong sense of living in fear. And it made a lot of sense of why I had those feelings and thoughts growing up and then into adulthood. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you still have a visual memory of it, or did it only happen during that one thing and it's gone now?
Oh, no, I have the memories. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, man.
But it's not like I was saying, they hold a neutral charge now. They don't hold a charge of distress.
Yeah.
So before, like I could feel, so this would be like in my pelvis, and I would just feel, oh God, like when I was like even talking to you guys now, I can feel very, like I don't feel the sensation in my body. But when the whole year in the EMDR, then I started to share with friends and family, I could still feel it in my body. And like, it was like a sensation, and it just continued to become more neutralized. And so I think that's probably too why the book didn't come out till now, because I feel that, like, I had it written for 2 years now and I didn't release it. And I think it's probably to be at a really like state of being that's more integrated and calm and neutralized for talking a lot about subjects like sexual abuse and infidelity, where you can get into that heightened state quickly if it hasn't been processed enough, I think. And I kind of just noticed that from talking about it over the years with people and my therapist. But yeah, it's very interesting.
It's
very interesting.
Yeah. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I think sometimes when you go through hardship or turmoil, trauma, it's said to you so much. It's hard. Like, there is a narrative, and it's true. It is not easy work to get to the other side of it. It's not easy work to reconcile these feelings, to neutralize, as you're saying. It's a lot of hard work. And I think when you're at the beginning stages of it, and maybe, I don't know, maybe you can talk about this a little bit, but when you're at those beginning stages of it, it's almost like, oh, do I let myself go there? Because that's going to be a lot, and I'm already feeling a lot. And I don't know if I have the capacity to feel more than what I'm already at right now. But I know it, you have to go through it to, but there's so much saying it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. Like, prepare yourself, because it's really hard.
Yeah, I know. You don't want to go into it feeling overwhelmed. Or what I noticed is that, like, as my nervous system was healing throughout the process, it never allowed anything to come forward until there was enough safety there, or like another word would be capacity. So it was like a year and a half of doing that EMDR before any of the childhood trauma came out. And I was on a medication. So some people do well with having like a anti-anxiety, anti-depression medication as assistance. And I think I was on it for about 3 years, and it really, I think, did help my nervous system calm so much to be able to have these memories come up and process and release. Because I don't think that something can come up unless your body feels safe enough. Because I experienced it that way. That's why I think that's true. It took about a year and a half for those memories to come forward.
It's almost like your body just knows you can only handle so much at a time.
Well,
yeah. And I think I asked at that time, I said, I want to see the root of this self-hatred, and I'm now ready, where I didn't have that thought before. So I think, again, it's like a slower process of when you're being connected into that sense of self and intuition and say God, that you can say, I'm not ready for that now, but I'm ready for this. And can we work on this right now? And then take it as like a step-by-step process, because your body is always going to protect itself. Your nervous system and your mind is always going to protect itself from harm. And yeah, I think that it's definitely, you don't have to rush into it and feel like it is hard work. Also, what I started to learn about neuroscience and how you think, feel, choose, and this is Dr. Caroline Leaf's work on, she's a neuroscientist, which I read her book and I attended a talk and I really started to research more on it, is if I tell myself something's going to be hard, then it is, because your thoughts are creating your reality. So if I think something is, I'm going to say, I'm going to experience this with ease and grace. That's like a new thing I say a lot. Even though I think it could be hard, I'm not going to say that, because I want my thought to be, I'm going to experience this with ease and grace. And then I'm going to feel ease and grace, because you think, feel, and then you choose, or your action comes last. So if your thoughts are creating your feelings, you can say to yourself, I know other people are saying this is going to be really hard, but I'm choosing to experience this with ease and grace. And then just see what happens, because you just don't know. And I do this often in my workout class when I'm just like, oh God, this is so hard and I don't like this. And then I say, no, Andrea, just say, I'm going to experience this with ease and grace. I want to feel like this is joyful and fun. And then it really does switch it for me. So it's interesting, because you can create new neural pathways. You can create a new kind of program that's running your body. And so I would say to everyone who wants to start doing work like this, just to say, take it one step at a time, and believe that it can be a smoother, gentler process.
Yeah.
And not listen to people that say that it's hard or challenging.
Yeah. I want to add on to all the things you just said there, because I've said this before in an episode and I'm going to say it again here, is when you're talking about like that safety for your body, like you have to feel safe from what's happening before you can experience the next layer of how this is impacting you. I've said this before, like we talk about how like depression and anxiety and all these mental health things didn't just appear, they've existed forever, but why are they skyrocketing right now? And there's a lot to that, but I think a piece of it is it did always exist. But when we were living in the Great Depression, we didn't have the capacity to have depression and anxiety. Like we had to survive. So like every generation prior to our parents' generation literally was living in actual survival mode. Like it was get food on the table, grow your own food, make your own food. If you didn't have it, like you weren't going to survive. Like every generation prior to our parents, that was their life. So like there was not space for it. It doesn't mean it didn't exist. It means that there wasn't, their bodies needed to survive physically. They didn't have the ability to recognize the mental survival they need. And that's just my own personal theory. And it makes perfect sense based on what you're saying, because again, talking about childhood cancer this month, like, well, in the month of September, is many parents say when you're in treatment, when you're in all the intensity, when you're in the hospital, like it actually doesn't feel like it's that hard on me. It's when treatment ends. It's when treatment ends, and now there's now what? Now that's when parents are saying that they're having more mental breakdowns, they're having a harder time because they're not in this survival mode. They get to move on to the next phase, and that's when their body has the capacity to worry about their own mental health, which is kind of what you were saying.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. And I often wonder, like, why are we the first generation that's interested into this personal growth and healing work and childhood trauma and going to therapy, where our parents' generation, that wasn't, like, it was unheard of. And it's right, like both my parents grew up on farms. They had to work on the farm. It was like work hard to make money to survive. Yeah.
Yeah. But survival wasn't the societal standard back then. It was certain individual family standards.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So like, anyways, I feel like that's a whole the topic we could go into. I won't go down that road because I could talk about it forever. But yeah, like I think it's like, that's a thing, right? Is society prior to our parents' generation was, in North America at least, was doing really well. And prior to that, it wasn't. There was lots of wars and Great Depression. And then our parents' generation had more, not every individual family, but as a general society had more availability. But they were still coming out of the mentality of there is no mental health issues, there is no nothing. And but they had them because of, they now had space for them, but they didn't deal with them. And we dealt with the repercussions of them not working through that. And now we're like, okay, we see a repeat here. Let's fix this. It's my own personal theory.
We're like the first generation that gets to, yay for us, heal all of the generational trauma that has gone on. That was another part that really I loved reading about, and I've heard about it before, but I loved reading about it in your book too, and you described it so perfectly, that how generational trauma can perpetuate. Yeah. It's fascinating. And is that all related to neuroscience? Like, is that?
I would say it's somewhat related and into like the interpersonal neurobiology, which is a branch of neuroscience. So Mark Wolyn's work is what I featured in the book, and I read his work, It Didn't Start With You. And I really resonated with that, going through what I was going through. And I started to see, how I chose my partner and like how it mimicked like the relationship with my mom when I was small. And then just seeing the generational trauma that was both on my mom and dad's side and years before them. And so it really does get passed along until there's awareness around it. And I find it super fascinating as well, and want to like interrupt that. It's just, I'm still learning about it as well, and taking the time to like understand and work through those things. But it made a lot of sense on how I was raised, and then going into adulthood, and then who you choose for relationships, and then what happens, like how a relation plays out, and things like infidelity happen, or how childhood trauma is related to, I say like something like infidelity, and why we do choose the partners we choose. So I think it's all very much connected.
Yeah. I just want to touch on one more thing that you were saying before, which was like the mindset of like, I want to come at this with ease and grace. And you were saying like, if I think that's going to be hard, it's going to be hard. And like, how many times, I don't know if you've had this, but I've had this where someone says, I wish someone told me how hard being a mom was before I became a mom. And I'm like, I get that. I hear that. But also, if someone had told you, would you have done it? And would you have believed them? And would it be even harder if someone had told you, because you would have been coming into it with the mindset of this is going to be hard, instead of it's going to be a breeze. And then it's harder than you thought it was going to be, but you didn't come into it anticipating this hardness, you know? So I think that mindset that you have is such a huge thing with all of the things that we want this reality. But then if someone tells you how hard it's going to be, or how bad it is, or how good it is, you have this mental image of what it's supposed to be. And it's either going to meet or exceed that. And then you're kind of in this mental state already, instead of coming in from it from a different angle.
And I think too, it's connected of like, am I in the present moment? Because you either project from the past or the future if you're not connected in the present. So if you're taking someone's opinion from the past, or you're thinking into the future, like, oh, this thing is going to be really hard, you don't actually know that that's true. The only truth there is here in the now, and what's in the present moment. And you can help control and navigate or dictate that situation, because again, you think, feel, choose. So before, for me, like if I didn't have awareness around this, I was always coming from the past to the future with having anxiety and predicting outcomes, or worrying about something that happened in the past. And it's still a challenge for me often to not feel fear or threat, as it was so ingrained in me from a small child. And every day when I walk to the gym in the morning and it's dark, my acupuncture Chinese medicine practitioner, he'll say, just always tell yourself, Andrea, this is not a threat. This is not a threat. Like, I have to very much be conscious of reminding myself these things. And I think that's just a tool to help you be in the present moment. Like right now, no, there is no threat. Right now, there's just this present moment, and I can choose from this moment something new, and I can choose how I want to approach something or think about something. And that has way more power than anticipating the future.
100%.
Which it's it's something that I think if you have awareness, and then you can make a new choice.
100%. Oh, this thing is happening. I got a thing happening here. You guys might have to help me unravel this thing that's going on in here. Anybody that's listening and not watching this is not going to get the full value of my like.
You're missing all the hand motions.
hand motions. When you were both talking, I had this realization of like, it's almost like when we're talking about feeling things in our body, what does it feel like in your body when somebody says something is going to be hard? Is almost like when you know you're about to fall down a flight of stairs and your whole body tenses up. How do you feel in your body when everything tenses up? Nothing can enter in. Everything is trapped inside, and you can't feel anything else but this like anticipatory, right? But if you're how ease and grace, I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna feel this with ease and grace. That in your body feels fluid. Yeah. It feels open. It feels, Sammy's laughing at, it feels like this, like you can, I need to know what that is, Sammy. But do you know what I mean? Like you just have that ease that like you can.
It's like relaxing, calming.
I bet she has a Friends reference. Do you have a Friends reference, Sammy? Is it going to be Pivot?
I'm picturing someone falling down a giant flight of stairs and thinking, I'm taking this with ease and grace. I'm taking this with ease and grace.
Oh my God. You know, though, I think they teach race car drivers, they say, what's the term? Become a something that's like super like letting go of like the steering wheel. I don't know
Yeah.
what I heard it, someone talking about this, and I was like, that makes so much sense. So if you're going to get in a crash, you need to, I don't know, it's like not become a dead frog, but it is a term like that where you
Relax your muscles.
yeah, relax your muscles and it prevents injury.
It's just like, I had this bad movie, you know, those like giant sets of stairs off of like a pyramid or a Mayan thing, and someone's tumbling and hitting every step, and ease and grace, ease and grace, ease and grace. It's what's going through my head right now. Sorry, guys. Comedic
I think
break.
it's called dead bug when you become a dead bug.
Oh, yeah.
Because then you I think it prevents injury.
It's
But
true.
I think most of the time, I think we're all the ones that are like hitting each step and being like, oh gosh, why? Yeah.
I think this ties in a lot to what you were talking about when you quit social media and how it allowed you to be more available to experience the joy and gratitude and love in real time. And this like kind of ties into a lot of that in general, is being in that present moment and not just worrying about, like, I mean, in the book you talked about like being picture perfect and comparing life to other people, but it all is all encompassing, right? If you can be in that present moment, it can help to release the anxiety, the depression, the worry, the fear. I guess, can you speak about what that was like for you when you experienced that?
Yeah. And for quitting social media, it also allowed to release like I was trying to maybe get external validation from, like another person's opinion or what they would say, but also like you're saying, be more in the present moment because I wasn't distracted by something. So this would be something you could use like as dissociation. So you could say like binge Netflix or be on your phone or drink, shop, things that dissociate from what you're feeling in the present moment. So that was a real key learning for me, was how was I utilizing these things in the wrong way? And it was more detrimental because if you're dissociating from how you're feeling and being in the present moment, like for me, I didn't feel safe in the present moment. I didn't feel safe in my body. I didn't feel safe in the present because that was scary. And those feelings of anxiety or fear would be there constantly. And so dissociation was a protection tool for myself and my nervous system to be able to function, I think, in society. And so that was a real key learning for me, was that how I use that to dissociate. So when I took that tool away, it forced me into using these other methods and healthy tools to be in the present moment and to learn how to like, do meditation and be in stillness. And actually, like, I noticed that I can be like in a conversation a lot more now where I don't actually say a lot. Like, I like to listen. And before I would always want to talk. And now I find myself like I could just sit a lot of times with a friend like on a bench and like not even say anything and it like feel really connected, where I don't think I could have done that before. And it's more of like a calmer space of like just beingness and not having to do anything. So I definitely think, yeah, like it's something like social media or drinking or watching a show or like shopping, all of which I had done in the past and still do in moderation now. I have more awareness on, am I choosing this now to dissociate? And I mean, you can do that for sure. Like, and I have self-compassion, like, Andrea, you are doing the best you can. So if you want to dissociate, like, you can go dissociate. This is a lot right now. But also just learning to be in the present moment and to do like something like meditation or prayer really helped recognize those feelings that were coming up, and then again coming back to like just releasing it. I think it's a constant cycle of feeling and releasing all the time, all the time. Because again, if we're just energy and we're taking in, letting go of energy, if we stop that process, then there's going to be like that stuckness, like we were talking about inside. And then that's going to be coming out towards others. And that's not going to be coming from that place of love.
Yeah. I mean, what I really heard you just say there was like, it's okay to disassociate, but are you being intentional or unintentional about it?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to ask. I feel like we don't have enough time for the Andrea. Like, there's so many questions on my paper right now. But just talking about this being in the present moment, someone who's worked with anxiety and everything like that, can you talk about how do you be present and accept what is present and take in the joy, but still prepare for the future? Because we can't only live in the present. We have to be aware that there is a future, and at least this is my take on it. Totally give me your thoughts on this if you disagree, which is totally cool. But there is still futures. Like, we can't just be like, oh, like today is great. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, my kids didn't get lunches today because I didn't make them yesterday. You know what I mean? Like those little preparings, not anxiety preparing, but like actual physical preparing for the future while being in the present moment.
I think I always go back to not trying too much to prepare. I actually don't plan a lot now. I used to be very much a planner and like wanting to control everything. And I think it came from a place of that anxiety and the fear and trying to feel safe. But I'm a very spontaneous, more like last minute, something comes up type person, and more going with the flow of life kind of thing. But I totally understand the idea of like motherhood and having a job and like being able to attend meetings and that kind of thing. So I think what I've learned is if I'm doing a task, be like all in on that task. So if I'm making a lunch, then I'm just like all in on a lunch. Where before, again, I would dissociate, daydream, be thinking about a lot of other things where I would have to remind myself to be like, just make this lunch. Like, don't actually multitask. And if I'm working on a project for work, it's like really being all in and putting all of that effort and energy into that one thing at the one time. And then I also find I used a lot of like lists or journals still, which I liked to have if I knew I had a lot of things that like I needed to cross off or do, or maybe plan ahead for. But again, I think I had a less attachment to it. So I would like, if something didn't actually go how I had planned or like wrote it out on my sheet of paper or list, then I was like, I'm okay with this. So like, if I miss a flight, I'm okay with that. If I get stuck in traffic, I'm okay with that. Because I think that I've just learned in so many times now that I am not always in control. And some of these things that come out and this interconnectedness of everyone that exists is higher than I can imagine. So like maybe I'm supposed to miss this flight. Maybe I'm supposed to get stuck in traffic and have to take a different route. Maybe I'm going to meet a stranger who then I'm going to talk to and change their life that day. Or maybe I'm going to be at the right place at the right time for someone else. And really be like less focused on me or like and more of the greater good of all. And again, this is something I have to do all the time and practice every day, and I'm not super great at this yet either, but I do intuitively get them a reminder of like, okay, Andrea, you don't have to be stressed out that this didn't go the way you wanted it to. So I think just being more willing for things to not go seemingly the right way.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Really good. Really good. Okay, I really want to ask you this. I really want to ask you this question. I know I messaged you about this. And in the book, you talk about your relationship with your mom and how prior to a lot of the work that you had done, I don't know, you didn't really go into a lot of detail, but your relationship with your mom wasn't awesome. Mm-hmm. And then going through a lot of work, it allowed you to have a lot of forgiveness and a lot of grace and move forward. Can you talk about what your relationship, like how that shifted your relationship with your mom and what your relationship is like with your mom now?
Mm-hmm. It definitely brought more understanding and, like you're saying, compassion towards her and what she went through as a child, and then how that affected her as being a mother for us. Um, especially with Mark Wolyn's work, he talks a lot about this in his book, the other person who you're in a relationship doesn't have to do any of this work. It's essentially everything that's changing inside of you, and that's going to change the dynamic between another person. And so I would often like share stuff with my mom, and she sometimes would be receptive and sometimes wouldn't be. But I think again, it like a healed this attachment of wanting things to be a certain way, and more of an acceptance of like, this is the way things are, and this is our relationship and our dynamic. I definitely feel probably it's more loving, but on the outside, like I don't think it actually has changed a lot, but the internal feelings of how I feel have definitely changed. And even if I get like upset about something, I think there's just this calm courage again of like expressing my need and saying like, this is hurt my feelings, or this came across critically, and releasing a lot of that fear of like, oh, I'm going to get in trouble if I upset my mom, which was like a deep seated thing from childhood. And letting go of like the way I think I a mother should have been towards me, or like the mom that I needed to have, where I am so lucky and grateful for so many things from my mom, and how she took care of us, and that her strengths are perhaps in just certain areas, and that again comes from just how she was raised and her conditioning, programming, and what she went through as a child as well. And just to think of it like as a larger perspective and overarching view, instead of getting like really stuck into something really small, or like in the weeds of, well, I wish this would be different, or our relationship would be different in a certain way. So I can't say like now, oh, it's like amazing and perfect. And like even in the book, I'll say like, well, I healed the relationship with my mom, and now I have this like childhood trauma that comes up. It's not like it's the healing's ever done. Like I think it's a continual process, and it's just a more like unraveling, and a softening of the heart every time and remind myself like, this isn't about me. Like this is less about me and more about like, what can I give to someone else? And like this real like selflessness, which I think I have to remind myself too, and try to act from that place and not try to just focus on myself.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. So it sounds like you you took off your expectations of the relationship and just realized what the relationship is and where you can have that connection and where you can't, and owned it that way. Is that accurate?
That's a good summary. Yeah, that's accurate.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Which is like, I think that's the hardest part too, is I think we have these desires for what a relationship, whether it's our mom or our dad or our sister or our spouse or whatever, we have these desires for what the relationship can be. But like you said, we can't put on them what our expectations are. We can only shift our own expectations of what that. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. That makes sense. Yeah.
My coach used to say that the magic happens when you are disattached to the outcome or unattached to the outcome. And I remember the first time she said that to me, I was like, what? She was right.
You're so right.
True.
I know.
So true.
Okay, Andrea, honestly, we could take you all day, but we won't. Melissa, do you have any other questions? Otherwise, I have one last one for Andrea.
You ask your question. You go for it, Sammy. Absolutely, go for it.
Okay. First off, Andrea, thank you so much for being here today. Like, honestly, if you didn't have kids to pick up and places to be, we would just keep you. It's been incredible to be able to sit here and chat with you and just hear more about your mindset and your growth and your journey through everything. Like, I think so many people are going to gain so much value from this. The last question I really want to ask you is, if you were to sit down and someone was to come in front of you who is at the start of a journey right now, whether that's a journey of realizing there was infidelity, or it's a journey of ending a relationship, or it's a journey of self-growth, what kind of advice would you give to somebody in that position?
Ooh, this is a hard question. I think I would say one of the most important things to learn is how to be compassionate towards yourself, because that is only going to be reflected into how you can be compassionate to someone else. and to be very gentle with yourself and not try to push or force anything along the way of wanting to heal or, mend a relationship or get over a relationship that has ended. But to have the self-compassion and not be in a rush. I'm constantly taught this by God, like, Andrea, don't be in a rush. Nothing is a rush. Nothing is a rush. And I have to remind myself that, because I too get stuck into, this should be happening quicker. I should feel better quicker. I shouldn't feel this way right now. And to know that the way you're feeling, all the ways that you're going to be feeling are okay, and that you don't need to look outside of yourself to find what you need, that these practitioners are here to create space for you, but it's actually happening through you and inside of you, that healing process. And I would say your ability to feel good inside, calm, peace, love, is an internal process, and it has nothing to do with anything else going on outside of you. So the quicker you can realize that, and I know I just said don't be in a rush, but it's one thing that if you can connect and find a way to feel the internal process is what matters, and it's not what's going on outside, that will expedite the healing. If you want any expediting of it. But again, I keep getting told don't be in a rush by like God, source, infinite intelligence. So I'm guessing everyone else is not supposed to be in a rush as well. But it's a step in a way that things can start to be more easy and graceful, is maybe how I could say it, and not expedite the healing journey, but make it ease and graceful. Yeah.
Oh, that's really good, Andrea.
So good.
So good.
So good. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
Thank you so much, Andrea. I'm so glad that you reached out, because I was waiting until I built a relationship with the person behind the Gift of Infidelity before I asked them a question to be on the podcast.
So good. Honestly, we're so grateful to spend our morning with you and for you to share your experience with us, and you're just like a wealth of information, of inspiration is what I meant to say, and I'm just so grateful for your energy. Thank you.
Oh, I really appreciate you having me, and I really do think I needed to hear all this stuff today, because often I feel the same way as just what I said to say someone who's starting the journey. It's like I need to remind myself that, because often I get into a place of, this isn't happening fast enough kind of thing. So thank you both. This was very much impactful for me and heartfelt. So it was so nice to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. To help support the growth of this podcast, please feel free to leave us a review, follow us on socials, or recommend us to your friends. Your support honestly means the world to us. With love, Sammy and Melissa.